Kwara State High Court has sentenced 3 to death by hanging for the rape and murder of University of Ilorin student. The convicts were sentenced on Tuesday, December 13, 2022 in Ilorin after a 1.5-year legal battle. It could be recalled that a 300-level agricultural sciences student was found dead in her sister's home on 2nd June 2021. With her mouth gagged with clothes and bruises found on her private part. Reports as presented to the court by a pathologist from the University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital indicated that the autopsy carried out on the victim, Blessing Omowumi Olajide, confirmed she was raped and strangled to death. At the initial stage, 8 persons were the prime suspects, arrested by the Department of State Services, DSS, in connection with the murder and rape. But the convicts in court on Tuesday, 13th of December 2022, before their sentencing, the trial judge, Justice Ibrahim Adebayo Yusuf, who handed down the judgment, convicted first, second, and third suspects for the offenses of culpable homicide, punishable with death, conspiracy to commit robbery, and conspiracy to murder, while the 4th and 5th accused persons were each sentenced to 3 years imprisonment for the offense of theft. Though earlier the court discharged the unacquitted 6th, 7th, and 8th suspects on the basis that they were not found guilty of any charges against them. Suffice it to say the sentencing of this culprit has met the law timely, but on the average, views are that many more of such cases on the same capacity are yet to be granted any sentencing, as the status are not defined by the courts handling them. Nigeria today seeks to find out what could be holding the cases to be heard. Why the delay? Should victims and their families wait in vain or wait forever? These and more uncertainties will form the crux of the conversation on the program today. I am Eucharia Clinton. Welcome to Nigeria Today. In the studio with me is Asmau Benziz Liu, a gender and development expert. She's also Executive Director, Center for Nonviolence and Gender Advocacy in Nigeria. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, and good evening, viewers.
Also with me is Dr. Ejike Oji, Chairman, Management Committee, Association for the Advancement of Family Planning and Senior Special Assistant to Honorable Minister of FCT on Health and Hospital Management, and Women's Rights Activist. Glad to have you on set.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with you, Dr. Ejike. The case mentioned during the introduction, how would you describe the judgment?
Well, for some of us who have been advocating for people to be punished for what they do to our women, is a welcome development in terms of the fact at least there is a successful prosecution and judgments also meted out. There are countless of others that are out there that have not been found culpable for the heinous crimes that they commit. Before, it was so difficult to prove rape, both with the penal code in the north and then the criminal code in the south. In some cases, it's as good as saying you have to bring witnesses to show that you raped. The Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which was passed in 2015, has made it a lot easier to prove rape, because rape, you know, is a criminal offense. So you have to make sure that there's no reasonable doubt at all before you convict the defendant who has been brought to court. But the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act has made it much more possible. For me, as a gender activist, it speaks to the work I have been doing with the British Council for the past 7 years. In fact, I've trained in about 14 to 15 states where we train doctors and nurses who collect forensic medical information and then be able to present those documented evidence of what has happened to anybody that has been so far raped or so in the court in a way that it will be admissible in court. So I'm sure if you go check, you find that proper forensic medical evidence was collected and then also presented in the courts in a way that it was simple for a judge or the prosecuting counsels to be able to understand it and be able to present a very logical sequence of case in courts to make the judge to give out that very strong sentence. Even though in some crimes, death penalty is usually something that people would not really want to go to, and there are reasons for that, because modern science has shown, in some cases, in some countries, 40 years after, with latest forensic medical evidence, especially DNA, we found that people were also wrongly convicted and then, of course, sentenced to death. So it comes to the equation of capital punishment, whether that's the way we should go. That if you look at the crimes, everybody will herald that this is a welcome development. So it will put every other person on notice that you could be caught and dealt with.
Okay. Thank you. Asmao, crime committed in June 2021. We are having judgment in 2022 December. Would you describe that as a speedy dispensation of justice?
Well, within the Nigerian space, you could say, yeah, we have a reason to celebrate. Not because of the duration of time or how long it took for justice to be served or for the victim to access justice, but again, it also talks about the impact of the rape itself on the victim. You can imagine, on victims, not this particular individual, because for her case, she is dead. But look at what the impact will be to her family, you know, pursuing this case over and over for like a year plus. It's something that is traumatic to the family. And again, it also speaks to the justice and security system, because sometimes there's an adage that says justice delayed is justice denied. But in this case, we are seeing like maybe 10% out of 100 cases of rape that Nigerians have to deal with. And today, people are celebrating not just for the time it has taken for justice to be served, but for the fact that justice has been served. And like the previous speaker said, the capital punishment is not something we rush to celebrate, but I think whether they will appeal it or not, it has served its purpose. One, to the perpetrators, to know that it's not business as usual. The courts have the right to convict you, either life imprisonment or death sentence. So I think if at all there's going to be any consideration from death sentence, it should be life imprisonment, which to me is similar. So it is a good and a celebrated effort on the part of the judiciary that justice has been served to the family of the victim. And moving forward, this is something we as activists and gender advocates demand, that cases should not be prolonged. Cases should be handled based on, because these things are there, and you know the exhibits are there, all other things required for justice to be served are there. But sometimes the question you and I tend to ask is that why does it delay? And that brings us to the aspect of corruption. You understand? Some other people will want to delay it for one reason or the other, and so that prolongs. And sometimes evidences can also be tampered with in the course of seeking for justice. So I think if truly the judiciary wants to do their work, they really do it well. And that's why we are celebrating this case, and we as advocates, we are happy that at least for moving forward, such verdicts should also be meted on perpetrators to serve as deterrent.
Yeah. Now, the judgment, according to you, is a welcome development, and she said it's a welcome development. But how can we get more of this kind of judgments in the face of the pending cases we have? Like you rightly mentioned, there are some cases that are still there, like the one of the Edo State, the 2020 case, and even the 2019. These cases are still there. So how do we get justice like this, you know, in our courts? And given the fact that a lot of our victims also are not speaking up, so how do we navigate in this kind of situation?
Yes, this is where it's not just one stakeholder. There are major stakeholders to making sure justice is served when this sort of thing happens. Like I say, I do a lot of trainings. I've trained not just doctors, DSS officers, police officers. People don't know that when a woman is raped, people just think of the immediate. But there are 4 phases a woman goes through. The acute emotional phase, either there's physical violence, but at least there's an emotional upheaval, which lasts for about 2 weeks. The physical one might disappear, but the psychosocial one persists, emotional and all that persists. And then it goes into what we call the disruptive stage, which can last for about a year or 2. Then the regeneration or reconstruction stage, where the woman now tries to get back to her life, and that can last for years. And then when you think the woman has recovered, there's a new level phase which was just discovered by two Danish ladies a few years ago, what we call the underground stage. Put together, a woman might be suffering the rape she received 20 years ago. Remember, there was a case, will I say, celebrated, where it was alleged that a cleric raped a woman almost 20 years before. And then the woman came up now and complained. And everybody was saying, even women themselves were saying, if it happened 20 years, why are you coming now to ruin the young man's life? I think I was one of the speakers that came here. And I said to women, if you know the phases women go through, you know that that's a possibility. Somebody can be raped 20 years ago and she's still suffering from it. Having said all of this, one of the key things, like you say, is people don't come to complain. It's stigma. In almost every community in Nigeria we have studied, when you say that girl has been raped, kiss marriage from that environment away from that lady. When you want to go, your mother or your father say, that girl that has been raped, is that who you want to marry? So people now find it difficult to come and talk because of the consequences of the societal consequences. Then the one that is, I call the double jeopardy, when the rapist or the assailant is a member of the family. From the father to the uncle to even the brother. And that way, it is a collective family decision. This will not come to light because it will be a disgrace to the family. However, the girl is suffering. Nobody's talking about the young lady that has been raped. So that is one of the key things that are making people not come up. Then the second one is just recently that sexual assault referral centers are being set up. As we speak, as far as I know, there are only 3 of us that are forensic medical experts in training doctors and nurses on how to collect materials, document it well from patients. And that's why for the past 7 years we've been doing this training. And that's where we're getting some of these things. So one is, how do people properly train? And even the officers, there's a lot of logistics problem. You have to take the patients or the clients or the victim to court. Half of the time the police will say they don't have the resources, and truly it's a logistic thing. Okay, so there are so many things down there. That's why I say it's a collective stakeholder thing. All of us will agree. I'll stop you
right there, Dr. Ejike, and I'll go to Asmao. You know, he's talked about a lot about the rape victims, you know, and the centers. Now I want to ask, do we have enough centers that victims can go for assistance. But before you answer this question, we'll take a break. When we return, you give us answer to this question. Let's take a breather here. The program returns shortly after the Vox Pop. Stay with us.
This is NTA News 24 broadcasting from Abuja. You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the following platforms.
Start Times Channel 101, Freak TV Channel 703, GSTV Channel 419, and Go TV Channel 46.
For more information, log on to our website www.nta.ng or join us on our social media handles, Facebook at NTA News 24.
For comments, suggestions and inquiries, send an email to news24@nta.gov.ng or call us on the following numbers.
NTA News 24.
News and more news.
Welcome back. We sincerely apologize for not bringing you the Vox Pop. However, this is Nigeria Today, and we're discussing justice for the victims of rape. My guests are still with me, Dr. Ejike Oji, women's rights activist, and Asmau Benziz Leo, gender and development expert. Before we went on break, I was asking, do we have enough centers or facilities where victims can have assistance to have access to justice in the country?
Well, I can't claim that we have enough. We can't have enough because Nigeria has over 200 million in terms of demography, and almost 100 million are women, and included with girls. And we're talking about communities, we are talking about homes, we are talking about schools, we are talking about the street. Rape happens everywhere. We are talking about institutions. So we can't have enough. Of course, we know we should complement the effort of the government for establishing the sexual assault referral centers. And then other partners, NGOs that are also building shelters and also rendering services to survivors of rape. But we can't claim to have enough, because the question we should ask is that how much funding goes into that? And how much capacity does the personnel in these centers have? So many of them lack capacity to even handle rape cases. Besides the aspect of just having the sexual assault referral centers, how is the security system, especially the police, Nigerian police, when cases like this are reported? How are they handled? When you get to the medical centers, how are they handled? Do we have the expertise, like I started saying? And we get back to the psychosocial support structure in Nigeria. We don't even have enough psychologists, enough social workers to attend to the psychosocial needs of survivors of gender-based violence. We don't even have the community structure to understand the issue of confidentiality and then what we call survival center approach. We don't have it at the community level. So unless these structures are put in place, and these structures should all be institutional as well as community based, that is the only way we can say we have enough. So that where one aspect fails, for instance, where the medical cannot meet up to the standard, then the community can, augment or replace that. In so many communities in Africa, when there are rape cases in the community, instead of taking it to the appropriate formal channel to be handled, they instead go to the traditional or religious institutions. And that is how victim blaming begins, and that is how stigmatization begins. This is how the entire effect of rape itself steps in. But in other countries that are developed, you won't even know who is the victim of rape, because they adhere strictly to the principles of confidentiality from the referral pathway, where it started, who is involved, the partners that are responsible for taking care of these issues. But we don't have it here in this part of the world, and that is why almost everything revolves around the victim, and the victim suffers a kind of secondary trauma apart from the existing one that was perpetrated by the assailant, or who we call the rapist. So it's a serious thing, but I believe the part of my recommendation will be that there should be at least in every local government, 774 local governments in Nigeria should have the sexual assault referral center, not just having them their domicile there, but fully equipped, fully funded, and having enough capacity for the personnel that will handle such cases. And then it should also be made as a one-stop shop whereby the referral systems work effectively. We will have representative of the security there, we will have representative of the courts or the justice system there, you will have representative of those offering psychosocial support within the whole structure, not just that going, because sometimes going here and there makes it so, cumbersome for the family and the victim. But if we have like a model from other countries that have one-stop shop whereby every other thing will be in one facility, then the referrals can take place outside the facility. It makes it easier and then not even exposing the survivor to further trauma. Yeah.
Justice system, and we should have the centers in our local government. Now, I want to ask you, Dr. Ejike, we have in various states violence against persons prohibition laws in Nigeria. Now, in the face of this increase in rape victims or rape cases, how have we fared in the implementation or enforcement of these laws in the country?
Yes, the law was passed in 2015. And I'm proud to say I was part of fighting for that law. We fought for it for 7 years with 30 women groups, LAVAL, that made sure that happened. The reason why justice is like not coming as we wanted is those structures that we're talking about. Because sexual violence is not an ordinary violence. The way you collect the evidence, the way you transmit it to court, the privacy and confidentiality she mentioned here, those are very, very important ingredients in making sure you do everything well. As we speak, if I remember clearly, there are only about 19 sexual assault referral centers in the country. In Abuja here, I only know about one in Buhari. And so the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, the justice is coming in trickles. In trickles. In some cases, what has happened is the slow domestication of the act. Because, it was passed in the National Assembly, like I said, in 2015, but you need to have at least 2/3 of all the states adopting it for it to be a federal felony. So what this means, in some states, they have passed the law so it's easier to prove rape. In states that they do not have the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act at the state now is law. If it's not there, it's difficult. So the process is not just setting up the centers. It is also having an enabling law within that jurisdiction that the doctors will collect evidence and pass on to the police and then the prosecuting counsels to be able to use those ingredients to get justice for the people so assaulted. Now, we're even talking about this, but there is an epidemic of, I should say, pedophiles around the country. In some of these states, like I said, we train almost 70% of them. If you go there, the victims of these things are almost, in some states, as high as 80%. In fact, it ranges from 60 to 80% of the victims to be minors, kids below the age of 18. In some cases, the higher percentage is even kids below the age of 5. So you wonder, what is a man looking for in a 5-year-old's destiny? So it's an epidemic of things that are happening. I would even say, yes, there's an upsurge of sexual violence around the world. The pandemic made that, the shadow pandemic we called it. But I feel these things have been happening. In 2006, I carried a study, a retrospective study, in a state, when I saw some of the level of violence. In that, we found out that 13% of all gynecological emergencies were rape cases, and 45% were below the age of 9. The one that shocked us was that 80% of that 49% were below the age of 3.
Thank you very much. And briefly, just to round off, how do we get these victims to speak out? so that to enable them get justice in the face of the stigmatization, cultural barriers and religious barriers? Just, in 1 minute, please.
I think we have to go back to the foundation. Culture, religion plays a very greater role in the culture of silence. The reason being that families don't want to expose their children for future consequences, especially the girl child. You know what she stands to lose if everybody should know that she has been raped. So it is something that we have to work on. And also religious institutions should not always call people to settle out of court, because they are also fond of doing that. When it happens, they say, oh, this is a family thing, it's family honor. So it should not be condoned. Rape is a state offense, and so shall it be handled by the state. Families, individuals should hands off and allow the state and the law to take its course against the perpetrator. Doing that, moving forward, we will have so many cases that will be executed, because if they don't come forward, then there won't be any case to handle after all. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, that's it on Nigeria Today. A very big thank you to Asmau Benziz Liu, a gender and development expert. She is also Executive Director, Center for Nonviolence and Gender Advocacy in Nigeria. It's always a pleasure having you. Thank you.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Also, we have Dr. Ejike Oji, Chairman, Management Committee, Association for the Advancement of Family Planning, and Senior Special Assistant to Honorable Minister of FCT on Health and Hospital Management. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
And to our viewer, thanks for being there and keeping tab with the program every weekday by 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also watch these and other episodes on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. I am Eukaria Clinton. Once again, thank you for being there. Goodbye.